episode of Make America Great Again, Donald Trump will explain the meaning of the July 4th for the Negro. Lord help us.
Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration were brave men. They were great men, too, and great enough to give fame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to rise, at one time, such a number of great, truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view them is not certainly the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good deeds they did, and the principle they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with the national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light, and my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who so obdurate and dead to the claims of gratitude that would not thankfully acknowledge such priceless benefits? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee, when the chains of servitude have been torn from his limbs? I am not that man. In a case like that, the dumb might eloquently speak, and the lame man leap as an art. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common in the rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers, is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty, and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems, for inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct. Let me warn you that it is dangerous to copy the example of a nation whose crimes, towering up to heaven, were thrown down by the breath of the Almighty, burying that nation in irrevocable ruin. I can today make up the plaintive laments of a peeled and woe-smitten people. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they who wasted us required of us a mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? For forget thee, O Jerusalem. Let my right hand forget her cunning, if I do not remember thee. Let my tongue cleave to the roof of thy mouth. Fellow citizen, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains heavy and grievous yesterday are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do forget, If I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme, will be treason and most scandalous and shocking, and will make me a reproach before God and the world. My son, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view, standing there identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and soundly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the nature of humanity, which is outraged in the name of liberty, which is fettered in the name of the Constitution, and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce, with all the emphasis I can command, everything that serves to perpetuate slavery and the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice or who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. But I fancy I hear some of my audience saying, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause will be much more likely to succeed. But I submit where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed will you have it be argued? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light? Whilst I undertake to prove that the slave is a man, that point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to be punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes would be subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but to acknowledge that the slave is moral, intellectual, and responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding under severe fines and penalties. To teach the slave to read or to write, when you can put to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, when I may consent to argue the manhood of slaves. The dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cows of your hills, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute. Then will I argue with you that the slave is a man. For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. Is it not astounding that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working the metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering acts as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, have among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, catching a whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living a family as husbands, wives, and children, above all, confessing and worship the Christian God, and looking hopefully for life and immorality beyond the grave, we are all called upon to prove that we are men. Will you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is to be settled by the rules of logic and argument, as in matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans, dividing and subdividing a discourse to show that men have a natural right to freedom, speaking of it relatively and positively, negatively and affirmatively? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What am I to argue? That it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow man, to beat them with sticks, to play their flesh with a lash, to loathe their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employment for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. What then remains to be argued? Is that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctrines of divinity are mistaken? There's a blasphemy in the thought that which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? They that can, may I cannot. The time for such argument is past. At a time like this, such scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, boasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants brass fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery, your your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all the religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, run through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel to South America, search out every house, and when you have found the very last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of the nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day, presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. The arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles and contacts, and the genius of American institutions. My spirit is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and not round in the same old path of its fathers without interference. The time was then such could be, long established customs of hurtful character had formerly fenced themselves in and do their evil work with social impunity. Knowledge was then confined and enjoyed by now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and the empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce was borne away the gates of a strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. It makes its pathway over and under the seaway as well as on the earth. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparative annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. The far-off and fabulous Pacific rolls its grandeur at our feet. The celestial empire, the mysteries of ages is being solved. The fiat of the Almighty, let there be light, and has not yet spent its force. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or avarice, can now hide itself from all the all-pervading light. The iron shoe and crippled foot of China must be seen in contrast with nature. Africa must rise and put out her yet unwoven garment. Ethiopia shall stretch out her hand unto God. In the fervent aspiration of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let not every heart join in saying it. God speed the year of Jubilee, the wide world o'er, when from their galling chains set free, the press shall vilely bend the knee, and wear the yoke of a tyranny like brutes no more. That year will come in freedom's reign. To man his plundered rights again restore. God speed the day with human blood shall cease to flow, and every crime be understood. The claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow, that day will come off use to end, and change into a faithful friend each foe. God speed the hour, the glorious hour, when none to earth shall exercise a lordly power, nor in a tyrant's presence cower, but to all manhood stature tower by equal birth. That hour will come to each to all, and from his prison house to thrall go forth. Until that year, day, hour arrive, with head and heart and hand I'll strive to break the rod and rend thy God, the spoil of his prey deprived. So witness 7, and never from my chosen post, whatever the peril or the cost, be driven.
Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither person nor property will be safe. Why are you desecrating people's speeches still, Donnie, making yourself look like a fool, more than a fool than you already are? And how did you recover from the running so fast? What experimental drugs are you taking? You know what? I went to Zimbabwe once. I know how white people feel in America now. Relax. Because when I heard that police car driving by, I knew they weren't coming after me. We learned to write your own material. Did you learn your lesson that in the last few weeks? Keep this in mind. A freedom fighter learns the hard way that it is the oppressor who defines the nature of the struggle. And the oppressed is often left no recourse but to use methods that mirror those of the oppressor. At a point, one can only fight fire with fire. The show doesn't drive home a lesson, but it can open up people's minds enough for them to see how stupid every kind of prejudice can be.
Does anyone have a mother that would hit them with the shoe? I had a mother that would throw a shoe at the drop of a dime and F you up whenever she was aiming. By the time I was like 10, my mother's like Clint Eastwood with the shoe. How's that for second amendment? The Honorable Abolitionist Frederick Douglass gave that speech on July 5th, 1852. He gave that speech to show America the evils of slavery. What you know about slavery or its evils, Donnie? Did you know the effects when you publicly announced American parents are not going to accept indoctrination in our schools, cancel culture at work, or the repression of traditional faith, culture, and the values in the public square? Not anymore. You've shown your racist ways one too many times lately, Donnie. I didn't stand for it when I was president, and by making such remarks is a disgrace to the office of the president. You're the first impeached president to be running for election, and by God, I cannot tell a lie. I hope Joe Biden wins by a landslide. You have yet to learn the most important part of being president is showing compassion towards the people who elected you. You can't pick and choose which ones to appeal to. And you're recovering from the room that you still insist on making public appearances. Wouldn't it be ironic if you get many of your followers sick with the virus, but you keep downplaying like the effects of slavery? I'm going to leave you with this thought, Donnie. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That's my religion.
What do you know about slavery or bondage, Johnny? I think the only bondage you know about is when you meet up with your friends like Stormy Daniels and you try to plead hush money and keep it quiet. You try to play down the effects of our ancestors. You claim you want to make America great again. Do that and stop pretending America ever was great. America has yet to address the issues of racism that evolved after the Civil War, and if you call addressing them sweeping them under a rug with 10 million there, you're sorely mistaken, because that's why the problem is blown up in your face during your presidency. To suppress free speech is a double law. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. In publicly denouncing protesters, having officers pepper spray them, shoot them with pellets, and tell them the Proud Boys to stand by. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. You should play that. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Just like many Americans are doing now. You don't know the power of the dark side. I'll continue building that wall with my billions and fire you all and throw you all over the wall. Good night.
This has been another episode of Making America Great Again.
Tune in next week to see Johnny make a fool of himself again.
Hey George, what does Donald Trump say when he can't find his Viagra? The erection is